What is up, heroes? This is Midnight Zero, and welcome to my team builder for the NCPL Finals. We have made it to the championship. We are going up against Manou, coach of the Fresno Flygons, the very first opponent and going to be the very last opponent we play this particular season. I am really pumped up for this particular match. I love this song. It always gets me going, and yeah, I hope you guys are pumped too. I hope you guys are excited to see that I actually have a relatively nice team builder again, where we've got these nice little graphics and all. Like I said, I'm really excited for this match. I'm really excited I have a chance to play Manou again. I looked back at my match before. I noticed a lot I could have done better. I really think I'm going into this with a fresh mindset and a better, battle plan, and a better understanding of what I need to do in order to win, and with a better attitude in general. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped. Let's get into his team first. It has been a while since you guys have probably seen his team. So the first one I want to talk about is Mega Metagross. Easily one of the best, if not the best Pokemon in the league currently right now. I mean, Magirana gives it a run for its money, but Mega Metagross, we decided after like the 5th or 6th week that it was going to be banned for the next season, if there is going to be a next season, and it really deserves it. It's got a ridiculous amount of coverage between Meteor Mash, Bullet Punch, Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, Hammer Arm, Earthquake, potentially Hidden Power Fire, Hone Claws, Iron Head, Zen Headbutt. It just has so many incredibly viable moves to hit so many different things, and you really have to scout for all of it, which is the crazy part. And it's got great stats to boast as well. Its speed tier is base 110, so it's outspeeding most, really fast potential revenge killers anyways, and it forces a lot of things to be Scarf in order to try to revenge kill it, but because of its great natural bulk, it also requires a lot of chip in order to get those revenge kills. So it's really bulky, and it's got ridiculously solid base attack stat plus Tough Claws, so any sort of contact move is going to get a huge boost, do a ton of damage, and of course Meteor Mash has a chance to boost his attack by 1 stage, which is just ridiculous. So yeah, this thing is a monster to prep for. It's a monster to face. I fully anticipate him bringing it. Honestly, I fully anticipate him bringing the same team members as he did last time, but I'll get into that later. The next member he has on his team is Toxapex. The total opposite of Mega Metagross, a complete wall, whether it's specially defensively or physically defensively. It has access to great recovery in Recover and the ability Regenerator. It can set up Toxic Spikes, it can Scald Burn things. It is just such a wall and a pain to break through, especially for my team. So definitely a threat. Next up is ZAPDOS, a friend of mine. I used ZAPDOS my first time playing League format. Absolutely loved it. It's got great natural bulk, and it's got some great natural offensive capability too, and a solid speed tier, reliable recovery and roost, access to defog, access to Heat Wave for coverage move, and overall it's just a really good Pokemon. It's weak to rocks, which is a bit of a bummer for it, but outside of that it does really well. So yeah. Next up is HYDREIGON. HYDREIGON hits like a truck. It's got a base 125 special attack, but access to Stab, Dark Pulse, Draco Meteor, and then coverage moves in Fire Blast, Flash Cannon, Earthquake, Super Power, Iron Tail. I think it also gets Surf. So and it gets U-Turn for momentum potentially too, if it is choice locked, which it very well could be. It gets access to Taunt as well. It can Roost for recovery. It can run Life Orb, Scarf, Specs, all very effectively. Scouting what this set is going to be incredibly important. This thing is such a problem for my team. It's a problem for any team, really. And it is his Zmon. So he could potentially be going for like an Inferno Overdrive or a Corkscrew Crash at certain points. So definitely something to be afraid of. Next up is SHAYMIN. SHAYMIN is also a threat in and of itself, in that it's, thanks to its just naturally great stats or solid stats in just about every category, it can play a more defensive role or a more offensive role. It gets decent coverage in, using Hidden Power, Earth Power, Seed Flare. Seed Flare is a great move. It's a solid, strong stab, but it also has a solid chance, 50% chance, I believe, of lowering the opponent's special defense by 2 stages. So basically doubling its attack or its damage output for the next time it hits. So definitely a scary mon to go against. It can also run a defensive set with Sub, Leech Seed. It gets access to Reliable Recovery and Synthesis. It has Natural Cure as its ability, so statusing it is going to be really difficult. It's definitely difficult to deal with. Next up is Darmanitan. Darmanitan, look at that attack stat. Base 140 attack stat, boosted by sheer force, stab flare blitzes. This thing is such a monster, it hits like a truck, it's so difficult to switch into. It hits a decent speed tier to be more so an effective Scarfer than anything else, but it can also run Banded. It gets access to Rock Slide and Earthquake and U-Turn for momentum. It's a very strong and threatening offensive powerhouse. Next up is GRANBULL. I don't really anticipate much of GRANBULL, but it actually can be a defensive mon with access to Intimidate, and it can run a Cleric role because it has access to Heal now. What else can it do? I mean, it can run a Choice Band-Aid, like Adamant said. It's got a base 120 attack stat, so it can definitely put in work that way. But it doesn't have access to Reliable Recovery like other mons he does. So I feel like almost every one of his lower tier mons, whatever role they could play, could be effectively played by one of his top tier mons. So it's just not likely that I'll see many of these mons, but I am prepped for them nonetheless. Next up is Hitmonlee. I've used Hitmonlee in the past, really enjoyed using it. It's got a great attack stat, solid speed tier, and it's got access to high jump kick, potentially reckless high jump kick, which hits like a truck. If you don't want to risk it, you go for close combat. It gets blaze kick, sucker punch, mock punch, rapid spin, unburden potentially. It's definitely a good Pokemon, and it hits really hard. It doesn't hit hard enough to be like really much of a sweeper until late game after getting a solid amount of chip on things. So yeah. Next up is Durant. He actually traded Quagsire in for Durant. I think it was like week 3 or 4. So the first time I played him, he had Quagsire, but now he's got Durant, and it's one of those mons that also just hits hard and fast. It's got access to Hustle, which reduces the accuracy of your moves, but increases their damage output. So coming off a base 109 attack stat, you know, Hustle, Iron Head, and SCIZOR are definitely going to hit hard. It has access to Crunch and Superpower as well. So yeah, definitely a threat. Next up is Regirock, an all-around wall. Look at that HP, defense, and SPDEF spread. It doesn't have access to great offensive options. I mean, it has Stone Edge, which is Stone Edge at the end of the day, coming off a base 100 attack. But outside of that, it gets up rocks, it T-waves things, it rest talks potentially, but that's about it. Next up is SANDSLASH. SANDSLASH can be cool. It's an electric immunity, of course. It doesn't have great bulk and doesn't have great attack, but it is a rapid spinner, a rocker, and he's used it once before with Natural Gift, which was pretty interesting. Next up is ZANGOOSE. ZANGOOSE hits really hard. It has access to Guts boosted Stab Facades. So base 115 attack, Facade is base 140 when you are poisoned, and multiply that damage by 50%, or by 150%, 1.5, when your Guts boosted, and you've got a Stab Facade that's hitting so hard. It also gets access to Knockoff in close combat and quick attack for really strong priority too, so this thing definitely hits really hard. That said, it gets whittled away really easily because it has to run that Toxic Orb in order to effectively do damage. Next up is Dusknoir. I don't really know too much about Dusknoir. It typically runs a more offensive set in its respective tier, but it can run more physically bulky sets. I don't know, it's got a decent bulk spread, but it's nothing too special in my opinion. And then lastly is CRYOGONAL. Not a big fan of this Pokemon. It is really weak on the physical side. It's weak to rocks. It's a rapid spinner, and it gets, you know, stab ice coverage and hits a decent speed tier, but I don't know, I'm not too big a fan. So that's Manou's team. It's definitely a threatening team. Like, if there's one way to describe Manou's team, it's he's got a ton of threats. You have to be afraid of every single mon. He's got so many different ways to hit you physically and specially. He can recover with a lot of his mons. He's got reliable recovery. It's ridiculous how much momentum he can get with Volt Switch from ZAPDOS, U-turns from Darmanitan or HYDREIGON. He's got a great team. So with that being said, let's get into my team. The first mon that I decided and was pretty confident in was actually Thundurus T. And the item that I didn't really have enough room to put in there is the leftovers. So when we look at this Thundurus T, it's running Thunderbolt, HP Flying, Nasty Plot, and Agility. If you'll recall correctly, the first time I went up against Manou, I brought a Choice Scarf Thundurus T. And why was that? It's because I wanted something that naturally outsped Mega Metagross and every other Scarfer on his team. All of his mons are relatively slow. He's got Cryogonal at 105 and Durant at 109. And then Metagross at 110, but outside of that, Garchomp and Thundurus T outspeed everything, so all of those mons that are below that 100 speed tier, which typically make great Scarfers, I wanted to be able to outspeed with a Scarf of my own. But both of the mons that I can bring from an offensive presence standpoint do not appreciate being choice locked. Between his walls, he can effectively take hits and recover well and basically negate any momentum or damage I had or worked for with my offensive mons. So I simply didn't want to Scarf it again, and instead I definitely need more damage output, and I need to be able to take advantage of his switches more often. So that's why you're seeing Nasty Plot and Agility. Like I said, I outspeed a lot of things. I need to quickly identify what types of mons are Scarfed, if he's Jolly or Adamant Mega Metagross, because that determines whether or not I outspeed it naturally. And yeah, I can Nasty Plot on a lot of things, I can Agility on a lot of things. There's a reason later on in the team building that I might have more opportunities to do so, but for the time being, it's mostly get Thunderous Tea in on Toxapex or SHAYMIN, and with HP Flying, I do about 60% to SHAYMIN. With Thunderbolt, I'm doing quite a bit to Toxapex. I scare both of those out, potentially into one another, because he might expect Scarf again. He might go into SHAYMIN on an anticipated Thunderbolt. If I have Thunderous Tea in on Toxapex, he could have Ice Beam, but it's only going to do 37, 40-ish% to me, so I can Nasty Plot on that. And if he goes into one of his other mons, like potentially Regirock or something that he decides to sack and wants to lose and I outspeed and take a hit from, I can Agility up on that and just straight up sweep. My special attack is max because I want to do as much damage as possible. I don't want to risk any awkward spreads or anything like that. I'm doing, I believe, 96% at +2 to Mega Metagross. I'm pretty much 2 KOing everything. I need a little bit of extra chip on HYDREIGON though for Hidden Power Flying. I was considering Hidden Power Ice, but SHAYMIN is more of a threat for my team than HYDREIGON is, as I've built it. So I decided to go with Hidden Power Flying because SHAYMIN is a pain. And at +2, I'm doing roughly 76% to HYDREIGON anyway, so after rocks, after a Life Orb hit or two, he'll be in range of +2 Hidden Power Flying anyways. Having Thunderous Tea is also really helpful for the other members of my team from a synergy standpoint. With Volt Absorb, he needs to be careful about going for Thunder Punch with Mega Metagross, potentially Volt Switches or Thunderbolts with ZAPDOS, putting him in a constant state of having to predict and consider my immunities, potentially healing me up, all that sort of stuff. So that's why I have this particular Thunderous Tea. This is my main win con, like without a doubt. Looking at the rest of my team, how I built it, how I could have built it, there are very few things that I think could be that are as offensively potent as this Thunderous Tea. So definitely going to be playing around a sweep with Thunderous Tea. Anyways, next up we have SUICUNE, the next Pokemon I decided I wanted to bring. We are running ProCune with an interesting EV spread. Now, this SUICUNE in particular, I've grown to love ProCune throughout this particular season. Last season it was CRYOGONAL. I brought CRYOCONAL last time. Didn't have any chances to really mess around with Sleep Talk and everything because Toxapex was around, and Toxapex is still a problem for this SUICUNE. Don't get me wrong. But this SUICUNE is so essential to my team. It is such a great special and physical padding, I guess, for all of his offensive threats. Scald is there to get burns on things, to get chip on things, and just do what Scald does best. Calm Mind is there because then I can take on HYDREIGON and potentially even ZAPDOS, potentially SHAYMIN, his few special attackers, and I naturally take on his physical attackers pretty well, and I have a chance to burn them and do some decent chip damage with Scald. I have Substitute because there are some mons that are going to be doing more than 25%. If I substitute, it reduces the amount of prediction I have to do, and I eventually take hits, give myself a chance to get a burn. I can protect if, like Hitmonlee as High Jump Kick, or if I need that extra bit of leftovers recovery, if I want to stall out a particular move like Thunder Punch potentially, or Seed Flare. This is a lot more effective at doing that than CRYOCONAL was. Now, the EV spread I have, 252 HP is necessary to have base 100 or 101 HP substitutes. Why is that important? That means Seismic Toss isn't going to be breaking my substitute if he decides to bring something with Seismic Toss, potentially Regirock. And it means I'm going to have some really bulky substitutes. But why do I have 216 defense? You're going to notice that a lot of my EV spreads are efficient EV spreads. So as you invest more and more EVs in a particular stat, they become less efficient. It takes more and more EVs as you invest more and more in a particular stat to have a notable impact on that stat's capabilities. So, for example, I could spend 36 EVs in the defense column, or my defense stat, and it would maybe change how much I take from like a Metagross by 0.5, maybe 0.6%. But I can invest those 36 EVs in Spadef, and it will reduce how much I take from HYDREIGON by like 1.5 or 2%. So it's just making my defense, or all my EVs, efficient, making sure they're all doing as much as they possibly can and as much as I need them to do. So for 216 defense EVs, I take a Jolly Meteor Mash into a +1 Thunder Punch after rocks from Mega Metagross. I'm super unlikely to die from 2 Adamant Thunder Punches after switching in on rocks and protecting. What's it called? I only take 0.5% less from Banded Darmanitan, which does, I think, like 35-ish with Flare Blitz, and Metagross only does 1% more max because of those defense, or the reduced defense EVs. What else? I take on Life Orb Hitmonlee pretty well if it's Jolly, and let's see, Durant. I'm not too afraid of Durant, but Adamant Life Orb Durant's SCIZOR does just under the amount an Adamant Metagross's Thunder Punch would. And then what's important is the Spadef. The Spadef helps by about 1.5% with HYDREIGON and pretty much all of his special attackers, which will be important when going for potential Calm Minds and substitutes to take on stuff like Seed Flares, potential Volt Switches, Thunderbolts, Discharges, etc. And then the 4 special attack EVs are because there wasn't really any other stat that benefited from those 4 EVs. Whether I add them to defense, Spadef, I can't add them to HP, they weren't doing anything, so the 4 special attack could have an impact on certain little calcs, and once I'm, boosting, the impact that those 4 EVs will have will actually amplify. So that's why I have it in the special attack stat. I'm bold, this Suicune is built to take hits. It's built to protect to get back lefties, it's built to stall out Seed Flares, it's built to stall out Flare Blitzes, it's built to stall out Thunderbolts and Thunder Punches and Meteor Mashes, and to Scald for some chip damage, get burns on potentially Toxapex, potentially ZAPDOS, potentially Metagross, literally anything. A burn on HYDREIGON even would be incredibly helpful. This is meant to take on Draco Meteors or Flash Cannons or potential Z Flash Cannons or Z Iron Tails from HYDREIGON, anticipating my Florges. There's a lot that this Suicune can do. It's really flexible, and so I'm definitely going to want to play carefully with it. Alright, next up we have Garchomp. Now this Garchomp, you're probably missing, or noting that the item's missing. Very much like the first time I did this, I don't have a Z Crystal image to use, so I don't have an image there, but I'll actually be using Dragonium Z Garchomp. The first time I actually wanted to use Z Sandstorm, and I brought the Groundium Z Crystal rather than the Rockium Z. It didn't end up mattering, obviously, it's just kind of a funny mistake on my end, but the speed there is very similar to Thundurus T, outspeed all of the same relevant things. I wanted to Scarf this, but between his pretty much Zapdos and SHAYMIN and Toxapex, I couldn't really do anything effectively if I was locked into a move. So I didn't want to do that, but I obviously don't outspeed Mega Metagross unless it is Adamant, so I'm going to have to play around that accordingly. Why am I bringing Z-Move? Well, I was considering Life Orb for a while just to do damage, because Earthquake and Dragon Claw, all of those moves aren't doing too much to his respective walls. Earthquake does quite a bit to Toxapex, and Stone Edge can do quite a bit to Zapdos, and Poison Jab can do quite a bit to SHAYMIN, but if he's switching around effectively, Earthquake is doing like 20% to SHAYMIN, Dragon Claw is maybe doing like 30%, Dragon Claw is doing like 25-30% to Zapdos, etc. So I was debating, do I have just like 4 coverage moves? Do I go with Stone Edge, Poison Jab, Outraged / Dragon Claw, Earthquake? But then I play around with having to guess at what he's going for. He has a lot of immunities, he can wear me down, and to actually do effective damage, I need that Life Orb. And then I just get chipped away with rocks, potential poison, and then Life Orb damage each individual turn, and he can just reliably recover off all the damage I do to him. Life Orb Poison Jab to max defense SHAYMIN, I think does like 45, 46, maybe 50%, so he can even synthesis up on me. So Life Orb didn't seem like the way to go, and then I was thinking, okay, well then what if I brought a Z-move? What if I brought like Continental Crush to help out with Zapdos in particular, and it still hits Toxapex decently hard, but it didn't hit enough, and it was a one-time thing for specifically Zapdos, which I didn't necessarily feel like was the biggest threat on my team, and it was too narrow, it was too focused specifically on Zapdos. So I ended up thinking, what if I brought Dragonium Z? Well, let's see, I need Earthquake for pretty much all of his team. All of his lower tier mons don't appreciate Earthquake, and then I want Dragon Claw because I don't want to be locked into Outrage because he has great mons to switch into it potentially. So I wanted to bring Dragon Claw, and I was thinking, what if I Dragonium Z? What if I could use Devastating Drake with Dragon Claw, and Earthquake or Dragon Claw into Devastating Drake depending on what he switched into, could do quite a bit of damage. Probably after rocks, I mean, Dragon Claw into, Devastating Drake with Dragon Claw, did a ton, potentially KOing ZAPDOS. After a little bit of chip, it does the same for SHAYMIN and for, Toxapex. So I was considering that, and then I was like, wait a minute. What does Devastating Drake do with Outrage? And it's just that much more powerful, and that means I need significantly less chip damage. It means I can go for Earthquake or Dragon Claw or something on one of his walls, do maybe like 25-30%, not too much, and then go for a Devastating Drake that's going to do 65-70% depending on his spread, and really nuke something, absolutely just get rid of one of his walls, which will help out the rest of my team so much. And I obviously don't want to go for Outrage as long as I don't need to, but even if he switches into something like Metagross, it's going to take 40-ish% from Devastating Drake. It's still going to take a decent amount from Dragon Claw. It doesn't want to switch into potential Earthquakes, and between Devastating Drake and Earthquake and Dragon Claw, there isn't really much more coverage I need, because the Devastating Drake makes up for all the damage I would potentially get from having a particular coverage move and using it twice, which means I would need to correctly predict and then have him stay in on that super effective move to get the same amount of damage I would get from, or maybe even less than I would get from Devastating Drake plus a resisted move that he predicts correctly, and I don't have to risk that. So it seemed like Devastating Drake was the way to go. As far as my fourth move, I considered SD, because after I use my Devastating Drake, my damage output is going to be greatly reduced, but he still might want to switch into things, and I don't want to risk Stone Edge misses. I don't want to risk having to predict correctly and then losing all momentum. So if I go for SD, I'll ensure that whatever he does go into, I can go for the correct move at +2 rather than have to predict twice in a row to get the correct hits per se. And it also means that even if he does have reliable recovery, I'm not whittling away myself with Life Orb, and at +2 I can do more damage than I would with Life Orb, even if it's a resisted hit, even if it's a neutral hit, not super effective like it would be with a coverage move. So that's the mentality behind Garchomp. Garchomp is going to be really important in this match. It can break through one of his walls, just like Thunderous T, which can sweep and potentially break through his walls. I'm definitely going to need to play aggressively with them, but play carefully. Given that he's going to be running ice coverage, I'm definitely going to scout a lot more than I did last time. So that's the mentality behind Garchomp. Next up is Florges. Florges, I've only brought this 3 times. One of those times was the first time I played Manou, and this Florges is really necessary on the specially defensive side. He only has a few special attackers, but the ones he does, HYDREIGON, ZAPDOS, SHAYMIN, they all hit really hard, and I need Florges' ridiculous SPDEF stat, and I'm investing a ton in it as well, in order to tank those hits, to take Seed Flares, to take Thunderbolts, to take even Flash Cannons. I can switch in on Flash Cannons, which is really cool. In particular, I have 160 SPDEF, so that I can take 2 Seed Flares from max special attack Timid Meadow Plate SHAYMIN. Even if one of them gets the 50% chance to drop my SPDEF, which is really cool. And part of that is because Protect, and I can Wish Protect, even if I've had my SPDEF reduced, which is crazy. I can take 2 HYDREIGON Flash Cannons, even if Modest Life Orb, and I can switch in on it as long as I'm above 71%, and I can Wish Protect on Modest Flash Cannon, or Modest Life Orb Flash Cannons from HYDREIGON, which is pretty crazy, and I take on ZAPDOS super well. This is one of my great switch-ins to ZAPDOS, which can't really do too much. Moonblast does, decent damage to just about everything. It does like 15 or so, 15-20 to Metagross, does 25-30 to just about everything else. It doesn't do much to Toxapex. I'm going to have to be careful about using my Moonblast because I don't have a lot of them. I have Aromatherapy because I want to heal up my Mons. I don't want them to be toxic, I don't want them to be burnt and whittled away at like I'm trying to do to his team. I considered Worry Seed actually a lot to potentially on switch-ins neuter something's ability. Like, for example, a Mega Metagross without Tough Claws is not doing nearly as much damage, or a Darmanitan without Sheer Force isn't doing nearly as much damage. But at the end of the day, I wanted to bring Aromatherapy to help out with potentially Poison Suicune, potentially Burnt, other things, and potentially Frozen things, because he's probably going to be bringing Ice Beam on Toxapex, and I plan on at least trying to tank that once or twice. So definitely want to consider that. And yeah, Florges is going to be able to pass wishes to a lot of members on my team, keep them healthy, and I didn't need any more SPDEF, so I put the rest in defense to help out with potentially Iron Tail, Life Orb, HYDREIGON, or Iron Tail Z HYDREIGON. So yeah, that's the rationale there. And moving on to the next Pokemon, we have Bronzong. We're bringing a new Bronzong set, something we've never brought before. It's a really heat set in my opinion. We got a light clay Bronzong set with reflecting light screens, obviously not too crazy, but then we've got Future Sight and we've got a really interesting EV spread, so it's definitely something out of the box, something I typically don't do and I haven't done up until this point. I haven't used Future Sight or dual screens with Bronzong. I typically bring Gyro Ball, EQ, Rocks, and Toxic, and I'm pretty sure that's what I brought last time too. And so to start off with the mentality, I really wasn't sure what to do, but I needed Rocks, so I definitely wanted to throw Rocks on Bronzong. And then as far as what else to do, Bronzong takes quite a bit of damage from most things, and really, you know, he's got ridiculous offensive threats, and I wanted something that could help out my entire team with tanking hits, rather than just be able to tank hits pretty well. The first game I played, Bronzong got whittled away at really easily, and it was difficult to switch it in. So I wanted something, I mean, it's not going to have reliable recovery with lefties, but between Reflect and Light Screen, it can ease the amount of damage it takes from just about everything. And with Light Clay, it means that it can help out everything on my team take hits a lot better. It can help my Suicune sub up on potentially Thunder Punches from Adamant Mega Metagross, which is crazy. I can potentially live a Meteor Mash from Adamant Mega Metagross with my Florges. I can live Fire Blasts from non-Life Orb HYDREIGON with my next Pokemon, Mega SCIZOR, spoiler I guess. There are a lot of really cool things, and when I was analyzing my match, when I was really thinking about Manou's team, his team functions by being so strong, so offensive, so powerful, that it overpowers your team. It kills you before you get the chance to actually do effective damage back. So if you have an offensive mon, it's got to be offensive enough and fast enough to do enough damage to knock something out before getting nuked yourself. So Reflect and Light Screen help out a ton in that I will be able to actually live hits, so he can't afford to stay in. I put him on the defensive, I get to click moves, I get to go for attacks, and get some damage on him rather than the other way around. This will also help out a ton with setting up. Potentially, you know, Ice Beam from, for example, Toxapex on my Thundurus T will do 18 or so, 18-19% after a Light Screen. My Garchomp can take 2 Ice Beams from Toxapex under or behind a Light Screen. I can take, you know, Thunder Punches, I can take Ice Punches, I can take Meteor Mashes, I can take so many hits so much better behind a Reflect and Light Screen. It'll allow me to more comfortably Wish Pass. It means that of the Pokemon that do have reliable recovery, I can spend less time going for those recovery moves, giving him momentum, and spend more time getting the little bit of chip damage I need. I can go for attacks rather than roost over and over and over to get back, you know, like 15% each turn. I can instead, you know, roost, take a hit, do an attack, and then roost again. It allows me to have a lot more flexibility with healing up my Pokemon and then going for attacks with even my more defensive mons, and then to set up with my more offensive mons to take, you know, 1 or 2 turns even to boost up. So yeah, it's really cool. I mean, for example, with Thundurus T, I take behind a Light Screen, I take Seed Flare into, even if he gets the 50%, I take 2 Seed Flares after Rocks, so I can effectively Nasty Plot and Agility on a SHAYMIN, which is pretty cool. There's a lot that goes on. This is really team support Bronzong, and behind a Reflect and Light Screen, I can effectively try to Wish Pass to it to heal it up. So that's the idea. Heat Proof is there so that I can take on Darmanitan, potentially Fire Blast from HYDREIGON, potentially Heat Waves from ZAPDOS, which I fully anticipate. And I don't think he brought ground coverage at all really last time. So yeah, he might bring Earthquake on Metagross, he might bring Earthquake on Darmanitan, but he has to play around with that. And then I have, of course, Thundurus T, which is an immunity, and SUICUNE, which takes like nothing, and in general, Flare Blitz is like the better move to go for, so Heat Proof actually enables me to live a Scarf Darmanitan's Flare Blitz, and then behind a Reflect, I actually live an Adamant Choice Band Darmanitan's Flare Blitz too. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on with that. As far as the EV spread goes, the Spadef is specifically there for Dark Pulse into Light Screen Dark Pulse, so I can set up a Light Screen on HYDREIGON's Dark Pulse. I can take Life Orb Earth Powers from Modest SHAYMIN, and I can take T-Bolts from ZAPDOS, even if it's Life Orb really well. And if it's not Life Orb, I can actually take 3 of them just neutrally, but not even behind a light screen after rocks. So I can set up on that too, and yeah, that's the main idea. The defense is to help out with Mega Metagross in particular. I don't get 2-hit KO'd by +1 Hammer Arm, and that's basically, I take like 33% I believe from Hammer Arm, and I take like 20-something% from Meteor Mash, so it's just under the assumption like maybe he'll go for Meteor Mash, get a +1, and then go for Hammer Arm or something like that, if he is bringing Hammer Arm, of course. I, behind Reflect, have a decent chance of taking regular Earthquake into behind Reflect Earthquake from Mega Metagross. There's just a lot that goes into this, and then the 4 special attack is to help out because it didn't help out anywhere else with potentially Future Sight. Future Sight is really cool. I was really torn between these, 3 moves for this last slot. Also, sorry, this team builder is going on for so long. What do I run? Psychic, Toxic, or Future Sight? That was my dilemma. Toxic hits pretty much everything except for Toxapex and Mega Metagross, and then of course like Durant. And it whittles away at things. There's Psychic, which hits what's in front of me. I can do effective damage to what's immediately in front of me. It does 35 to 45 to Toxapex, which is really helpful. And then there's Future Sight, which I go for the attack, and then 2 turns later, it's a base 120 Psychic attack that hits what's in front of me. And why is that cool, and why did I end up choosing that? Is because it's stronger, so it prevents potentially SHAYMIN or ZAPDOS from substituting up on me. It'll break those subs. And more importantly, it forces him to play carefully with Toxapex and HYDREIGON. Depending on what he brings in on Bronzong, I can switch into something like potentially FLORGES or potentially SUICUNE and bait in Toxapex, which will then take a Future Sight potentially. And on that turn, I can, go into something like Thunderous T so that I pressure it to switch out. I get a chance to set up. If he switches out, he doesn't have the opportunity to heal up, set up Toxic Spikes. Something else has to take more Hazards damage. It forces him to have to play carefully, and it kind of messes up his potential game plan. It makes him skeptical and have to be careful about which walls he can bring into which mons. It potentially gives me chances to get damage on some of his non-wall mons. So that's why I decided on Future Sight. And then lastly, we have Mega SCIZOR, the last mon I decided on because I simply need something better for Mega Metagross. This thing, physically defensive Mega SCIZOR, is the only reliable answer I have to, Mega Metagross. Taking close to nothing, or like 20-ish, like low 20s from Meteor Mash, low 30s from Hammer Arm. I can roost up on +1 Hammer Arms. I can defog away hazards if he tries to get up rocks, if he wants to get up Toxic Spikes, if he wants to, attack me with just about anything. I can even, because of this Spadef actually in the HP, I can even roost up on Hidden Power Fires from it, and unless he's like a neutral natured, but I only take like a little bit over 50% from it, so I can scout for it effectively. I'm running a lot of defense just to deal with all of his defensive threats. ZANGOOSE in particular, Hitmonlee to an extent, Mega Metagross. Darmanitan is the one exception, I guess. And yeah, this thing is just so bulky. It can do quite a bit of damage with Bullet Punch too. Last time I ran U-Turn in Pursuit, but I wanted to run Bullet Punch this time around because I found myself very rarely ever getting damage off with SCIZOR, simply because I was U-turning into the same mons that were walls essentially, and could recover it off easily. And if a mon was faster than me, it was more than likely carrying fire coverage, so there was never a chance for me to actually get damage off with it. But now in this particular case, I can, if a HYDREIGON is in front of me, at 30% or 35%, I can Bullet Punch to knock it out. If ZAPDOS is sitting in front of me weak, if Darmanitan is sitting in front of me weak, I can go for these Bullet Punches to do that damage without having to worry about him potentially roosting on my double, or having to risk a 50-50 staying in, going for like a U-turn on anticipated roost, something like that. So that's why I'm ending up going with Bullet Punch. It also help out with a lot of his lower tier mons in particular, but not as big of a threat. And then Pursuit is specifically there for Mega Metagross. I didn't pull the trigger enough last time I played Manou, but Pursuit is really helpful for chipping away at Mega Metagross. It does 25 to 30, 35-ish, and then potentially 40-ish percent if he tries to switch out, which is really cool because Mega Metagross doesn't have reliable recovery. He can't really heal that thing up, and that is a huge threat, and if it is gone, it alleviates a ton of pressure on my team. So if I can, get a couple Pursuits off on it, it's in potentially, if it's below 50%, it's in range of neutral, Thunderous Tease, Thunderbolt, so I can potentially Agility Sweep. It'll just be really helpful, you know, rocks, pursuing, potentially, I think 2 rocks, or 3 rock switch-ins, plus, you know, 2 pursuits if he tries to switch out. Could potentially even knock him out, or put him in bullet punch range. And, yeah, it's really defensively strong, but it will be getting worn away if he does try to switch it around and such. So that's why I brought Mega Scizor, get rid of hazards, potentially support the team to get good chip on Mega Metagross, and then potentially, you know, pick up some kills if things get whittled away enough, or to ensure that I'm doing enough damage to put something in range for later on. For example, HYDREIGON cannot kill me without getting hit by Bullet Punch and be outside of +2 hidden power flying range, which sounds incredibly specific, but it's also incredibly likely. So yeah, I did a lot of thinking about this particular team, about this matchup. Manou plays pretty aggressively, but in our first match, I just never took advantage of what I thought was going to happen. I never pulled the trigger, and that was easily my demise. I never switched in my offensive threats. I never actually got damage off. And I think having Reflect and Light Screen will make it a lot easier for me to do that, and it'll help me recover if I make mistakes with regards to that. But like I said around the middle of this video, Manou's team thrives on killing things before they take damage back. And with this team, I feel a lot more confident that I'll be able to take hits, do damage back, or take hits and set up, or take hits and help the rest of my team recover. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to say. I want to get up rocks early. I want to set up a Reflect and Light Screen so that I can start putting in work. I want to cherish Bronzong in this matchup, and I want to actually really, this match, every single member is important. All of my Mons are really important in this match. So hopefully things go well. Hopefully I'm able to take this one. I'm really looking forward to the match. I hope you guys are too. I'm pretty sure Manou is too, which is really cool. He's been having a difficult time throughout this season outside of Pokemon stuff, but I think he's looking forward to it. I think he's kind of excited for it, so I'm pretty happy to hear that. And I hope it's a good battle. But until the battle, this has been Midnight Zero, and this mission is complete.